it was my feeling that Graceland should be open to the public so they could share in his accomplishments and have a clearer understanding of not only the legend, but of the man himself.
At Elvis Presley's Graceland, every room tells a story, except one. While millions tour the mansion, the floor upstairs remains strictly off-limits. Time has stood still in that part of the mansion since the day Elvis left it. No guests, no staff, not even VIPs are allowed up there. But why? What's so secret, so sacred, that is being protected? Join us as we unravel the truth behind the most private section of Elvis Presley's legendary home, and the reason it remains out of bounds. Why the second floor at Graceland is off-limits. Before Elvis Presley passed away in 1977, his grand home, Graceland, was always full of life. Close friends and family members often visited or stayed for long periods. Some were invited to live inside the mansion, while others stayed in small buildings just beyond the main house. Everyone who spent time there noticed how the home reflected Presley's personality. The style, the colors, the furniture, everything in the house showed who he really was, even without him saying a word. The house felt open and expressive, much like the man who owned it. Even though the home seemed welcoming to those lucky enough to be invited, there was one part of Graceland that always stayed off-limits: the second floor. That was Elvis's private space, where he kept his master suite. It was like a secret world, and only a small number of people ever saw it. Even close friends had to wait for permission. If he allowed someone upstairs, it meant they were very important to him. That space wasn't for show. It was where he went to be alone, away from cameras and crowds. It was the only place he could truly relax and be himself. After Presley passed, Graceland slowly changed from a private home into a public place. In 1982, it opened its doors to tourists. Since then, hundreds of thousands of people have visited the famous mansion. They walk through the rooms, admire the decorations, and try to imagine what life was like inside. But no matter how far they go, they always reach a point where the path ends. The staircase that leads to the second floor is restricted. No one, not even presidents or foreign officials, has been allowed up there. That part of the house is frozen in time. The upstairs rooms have never been shown to the public. Many believe this is out of deep respect for Elvis's memory. Some say the space looks exactly as it did the day he passed, untouched and preserved just the way he left it. Others think it's because of what happened there. Presley's life had ended in the bathroom just off his bedroom, and that fact has cast a heavy shadow over the area. Letting the public walk through it might turn something sacred into something too sad, even uncomfortable. It would shift the focus from his legacy to the details of his demise. Only a few people have ever been allowed up there since Elvis passed away. His ex-wife, Priscilla Presley, and his daughter, Lisa Marie, were among them. Lisa Marie had strong feelings about the space. To her, it wasn't just a bedroom or a place of memories, it was part of her bond with her father. It's not just a private space. It's where his life ended. She wanted it to stay private, to hold on to something that belonged only to her and her family. The home might have become a museum, but that part of it still belonged to Elvis in a personal way. Although there is one well-known exception to the rule. Actor Nicolas Cage, who was once married to Lisa Marie, was allowed to go upstairs during their time together. Cage, a lifelong fan of Elvis, was granted the rare chance to see the hidden part of Graceland. He described it as a personal and emotional experience, one that few have ever had. Despite all the mystery and stories, the second floor remains closed to the world. Still, the silence behind those locked doors continues to fascinate people. That mystery has helped preserve the legend of Elvis Presley. It keeps a part of him just out of reach, still wrapped in the glamour and secrecy that surrounded him in life. In 2006, the importance of Graceland was officially recognized. It was named a National Historic Landmark by the United States Secretary of the Interior, Gail Norton. She explained that Elvis had changed American music and culture in a way that could never be reversed. Graceland was more than a home. It was a symbol of that change. Today, Graceland stands as one of the most visited homes in the United States. More than 600,000 people visit it each year, walking through the hallways and imagining the life of the man who once called it home. Yet, the very heart of the house remains hidden. The second floor, where Elvis lived his quietest moments and took his final breath, is still protected. It is the last piece of his world left untouched, a space held in silence, away from the eyes of the world, just as he wanted. Let's take a look at what makes this place renowned. Graceland's rich history. Graceland started as a peaceful stretch of land owned by Stephen C. Toeff, a man who had already made a name for himself in Memphis. He ran a successful printing company, one of the oldest in the city, and had once worked in the newspaper business. The property wasn't called Graceland for nothing. It was named after his daughter, Grace. She inherited the land from him in 1894, and for many years it remained part of the family. After Grace passed away, the land went to her niece, Ruth Moore. Ruth was a well-known socialite in Memphis, and along with her husband, Thomas Moore, she decided to do something special with the land. In 1939, they had a large colonial revival mansion built on the site. It was a grand house, more than 10,000 square feet in size, and was designed by the architectural firm Furbringer and Ehrman. The mansion stood proudly in the middle of open farmland, away from the city, with trees and space all around it. Years later, Elvis Presley was becoming a star. By 1956, his music career had exploded, and he was still living with his family in a modest house on Audubon Drive in Memphis. The home had cost $40,000, and at first, it was enough. But as more people heard his music and saw him on television, fans started gathering around the house every day. The neighborhood was quickly overwhelmed. Neighbors admired the young celebrity, but the constant noise and crowds became too much. Something had to change. Elvis gave his parents, Vernon and Gladys, the task of finding a home that felt like a farmhouse, with open space around it. He gave them a budget of $100,000 and asked them to find a place where the family could live peacefully. That search led them to Graceland, which at the time was far outside the Memphis city center. It was part of southern Shelby County, surrounded mostly by open land. In March 1957, Elvis bought the estate for $102,500. It was perfect. The house was big, the land was spacious, and it felt private. As the years passed, the area around Graceland changed. Memphis expanded, and new houses and developments were built nearby. What was once open countryside slowly became part of the city. But Graceland remained special, a private world for Elvis and those closest to him. He invited friends like Richard Williams and Buzz Cason to visit. They spent time laughing on the front porch, posing for pictures, and peeking through the windows at the colorful walls inside. Bright reds and purples filled the rooms, choices that reflected Elvis's bold and playful personality. He liked to joke that Graceland showed how a man could start with nothing and still achieve something great in America. Unfortunately, Graceland also became a place of sorrow for Elvis. In 1958, his mother Gladys passed away. She had been his emotional anchor, and losing her devastated him. His father, Vernon, later remarried in 1960 to Dee Stanley, and she moved into Graceland with her children. But the new family dynamic didn't bring peace. There were tensions between Elvis and his stepmother. Dee had made changes to the house, even replacing furniture and curtains that Gladys had chosen. Elvis never fully accepted those changes, so he had to set things right. One day, a van showed up at Graceland, and everything that belonged to Dee, her clothes, furniture, and even her pets, was packed up and moved out. Vernon, Dee, and her children were relocated to another house nearby, just down the road on Dolan Drive. Despite the growing fame and the changes in his life, Graceland always remained close to Elvis's heart. His cousin Billy Smith and his wife Jo often stayed with him at the mansion. The three of them would spend hours talking. Elvis would have nightmares and would go looking for Billy to help calm him down. and would sometimes even fall asleep in their bed. One room at the mansion became especially famous, the Jungle Room. It was filled with wild colors and unusual decor, a mix of patterns and textures that some thought was tacky. But Elvis loved it. In 1967, Elvis married Priscilla in Las Vegas. A year later, their daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, was born. Her early childhood was spent at Graceland, running through its halls and playing in the rooms her father loved so much. After Elvis and Priscilla divorced in 1972, Lisa moved to California with her mother, but Graceland still played a big role in her life. Every Christmas, the family would gather at the mansion to celebrate the holidays together. Lisa Marie always returned to the place where she had once lived with both her parents. Even when Elvis was on tour, Graceland was never far from his mind. Before he arrived at any hotel, his staff would prepare the room to look exactly like his favorite spaces at home. They brought in his furniture, arranged the space just right, and made sure everything felt familiar. It helped him relax, knowing that he could unwind in a place that looked like his home. Graceland wasn't just a house. It was where Elvis built a life with his family, faced his sorrows, and celebrated his joys. Over time, it became a symbol of who he was, holding the memories of his life's journey. Graceland becomes a monument. On August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley was found unalive in the bathroom of his Graceland mansion. He was only 42 years old. The first official cause listed was cardiac arrhythmia, but toxicology reports later revealed a much darker reality. His body was filled with a dangerous mix of hard substances, 14 in total, and some were found in very high amounts. His health had been slipping for some time, but no one expected him to go like that, so suddenly and in such an isolated, lonely way. After his demise, his body was placed in a heavy copper-lined coffin, weighing 1,900 pounds. It was set just inside the entrance hall at Graceland. For hours, people poured in, over 3,500 fans, quietly walking past to say goodbye. Just 2 days later, a private funeral was held inside the house. About 200 people attended. The coffin was placed in front of the colorful stained glass doorway leading to the music room, a spot Elvis had loved. It was a sorrowful goodbye, filled with emotion, silence, and the weight of his sudden end. Even after the funeral, Graceland remained more than just a house. Family members continued living there. His aunt, Delta, moved in after her husband passed away and stayed until her own passing in 1993. Elvis had invited her himself, hoping she would feel at peace there. That same year, Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's only daughter, inherited Graceland when she turned 25. She became the owner of the estate her father had turned into a kingdom of music, memories, and legacy. The meditation garden beside the mansion became the final resting place not just for Elvis, but for many of his closest family members. His parents, Gladys and Vernon Presley, were buried there. His grandmother, Minnie Mae, also rests nearby. Even Lisa Marie's son, Benjamin Keogh, was buried there, as well as Elvis's stillborn twin brother, Jesse Garin, is honored with a memorial gravestone also. Today, visitors can walk through the garden either during tours or before they begin. It has become a sacred space, a corner of Graceland that carries more meaning than words can describe. After Elvis's passing, his father Vernon took charge of the estate, but he passed away only 2 years later, in 1979. He had left the responsibility to Priscilla Presley, Elvis's former wife, to manage things on behalf of their daughter, Lisa Marie, who was just 11 years old at the time. Managing the estate wasn't easy. Graceland was costing $500,000 a year to maintain. Elvis had spent much of his fortune, and the inheritance left to Lisa Marie had dropped to around $1 million. Taxes and other expenses were quickly piling up. There was even talk of having to sell Graceland just to cover the costs. Priscilla didn't want that to happen. She began looking into how other famous estates had survived, like historic homes turned into museums. She found inspiration and made a bold decision. She brought in Jack Soden as the chief executive officer, and together, they planned to open Graceland to the public. It was a big risk, but it worked. On June 7, 1982, Graceland opened its doors to fans. Just 1 month later, it had already earned back all the money they had spent to prepare it. It quickly became more than a home. It became a destination. Priscilla became chairwoman and president of Elvis Presley Enterprises and stayed in that role until Lisa Marie came of age. Over the years, the estate's value grew dramatically, eventually becoming worth over $100 million. Every year on the anniversary of Elvis's death, fans from all over the world travel to Graceland. It has become a tradition known as Elvis Week. The events range from gatherings and talks to a special mass at St. Paul's Church. The biggest moment is the candlelight vigil, when people walk through the estate at night, holding candles and stopping at Elvis's grave. In 1997, the 20th anniversary drew media from around the world. It became a global event filled with emotion and remembrance. In 2002, on the 25th anniversary, about 40,000 people came, even though the rain poured down heavily. In 2015, for the 38th anniversary, around 30,000 people attended the vigil. By 2017, for the 40th anniversary, at least 50,000 fans were expected. That year, for the first time, visitors had to pay a small fee to attend, $28.75, to help cover the cost of extra security, as the crowds had become massive. For many fans, visiting Graceland is more than just a trip. It feels like a pilgrimage. Some save for years to finally step inside the world Elvis built. Once they arrive, they wear headphones that tell the story of his life. They walk through rooms filled with objects that once belonged to him. His guitars, his clothes, his records. Everything inside tells a piece of the story. The tour doesn't hide his struggles. It shows the man in full, his talent, his troubles, his kindness, and his deep love for gospel music. In the meditation garden, visitors often kneel or pray. Some quietly hum his songs or whisper words of thanks. Others leave flowers or handwritten notes. The wall surrounding Graceland is covered in messages. Some express admiration. Others ask for help or give thanks. The memory of Elvis Presley is not just kept alive by photos or songs, but by the devotion of people who still believe in what he meant to them. Graceland stands today not just as a house, but as a living memory, echoing with music, sorrow, and love. However, the property faced some challenges, changes, and controversies. Graceland is a place full of stories, memories, and treasures that once belonged to Elvis Presley. Over the years, it has changed and grown, yet it continues to pull people in from around the world. One of the biggest additions to Graceland is the new exhibit complex called Elvis Presley's Memphis. This space brings a fresh energy to the estate, giving fans more to see and explore. Among the attractions is Presley Motors, a museum that displays many of Elvis's cars, including his famous pink Cadillac. The collection is large and carefully maintained, showing just how much Elvis loved cars. Within the complex, visitors can also experience radio magic. Sirius Satellite Radio built a studio on site that plays Elvis's music 24 hours a day on its dedicated channel. The sounds of his voice echo through the walls of Graceland, keeping his legacy alive. Not far from the car museum, two aircraft sit proudly on display. One is the Lisa Marie, a Convair 880 jetliner, and the other is Hound Dog 2, a smaller Lockheed Jetstar business jet. These jets are no longer flying, but they remain at Graceland for visitors to see up close. They remind people how much Elvis enjoyed traveling in style. Back in 2005, Lisa Marie Presley made a big decision. She sold 85% of the business side of her father's estate, but kept Graceland itself and most of the personal items found inside. She trusted CKX, Inc., with managing Graceland. This company had strong ties to the entertainment industry and even owned the company behind the television show American Idol. Priscilla Presley was also involved, sitting on CKX's board of directors. The estate then became more focused on expanding the Graceland experience while holding on to its deep connection to Elvis's life. Later on, a company called Graceland Holdings, LLC, became the majority owner of Elvis Presley Enterprises, or EPE. This group was led by Joel Weinshanker. Even though Lisa Marie Presley had sold much of the business side, her estate kept a 15% share in the company. That small piece still gave her family a say in what happened with Graceland and helped protect Elvis's legacy. In August 2018, something very personal was brought out for the public to see. Gladys Presley's headstone, which had a Jewish Star of David on one side and a cross on the other, was placed in the meditation garden at Graceland. Elvis had designed it himself. For years, it had been stored away in the Graceland archive, but now it became a part of the experience for visitors, resting near the graves of the Presley family. A year later, in 2019, the owners of Graceland found themselves in a difficult situation. They wanted to grow the property with a $100 million expansion, but needed support from the city of Memphis. They warned that without help, they might have to move Graceland to another location. In response, the Memphis City Council agreed to a deal that provided tax incentives to help with the expansion. This allowed Graceland to remain in Memphis, its rightful home. In May 2024, trouble struck again. The property was listed for a foreclosure sale. A company claimed that Lisa Marie Presley had used Graceland as security for a $3.8 million loan in 2018. Riley Keough, her daughter, stepped forward and said the documents were fake. She filed a lawsuit to stop the sale and was supported by Elvis Presley Enterprises. When the case was brought to court, a judge from Shelby County declared the loan documents invalid. The lender didn't even show up for the hearing. After that, the foreclosure plans were dropped. NBC News tried to find information about the company involved, called Nosani Investments and Private Lending, but there were no clear public records. The person behind it, Gregory E. Nosani, couldn't be found either. Later, a strange and disturbing twist came to light. A group of identity thieves based in Nigeria claimed they were behind the whole thing. One of the leaders even sent an email to the New York Times in the Luganda language, saying their organization placed members across the United States who targeted the deceased. They had filed a claim in a California probate court saying Lisa Marie owed them $2.8 million, even though she had already passed away. The case made headlines, and experts said it would have gone unnoticed if it hadn't involved someone as famous as Elvis Presley's family. There was no solid proof that the company even existed. Despite all these events, Graceland remains untouched by the schemes. Lisa Marie's estate, now held in trust for her daughters, Riley Keough and the twins Harper and Finley Lockwood, still owns the Graceland Mansion and its original 13 acres. They also own all of Elvis's personal belongings, his costumes, furniture, awards, and cars. Before her demise in 2023, Lisa Marie had made sure that these items, along with the mansion, would always be available for public tours. She had kept her father's memory alive in the most open and respectful way possible. A detailed description of Elvis Presley's mansion. Graceland sits high on a hill, quietly watching over the green pastures below. It was surrounded by giant oak trees that stretched their arms wide across the land. The mansion itself was a grand two-story structure designed in the colonial revival style. Its main section stood tall, with 5 bays and a roof that sloped to the sides, covered in dark asphalt shingles. A central 2-story portico, shaped like a triangle at the top, projected proudly from the front, and 1-story wings spread out from both the north and south sides. Attached to one of those wings was a small stucco-covered building, originally a garage that could hold up to 4 cars. 2 chimneys stood tall, one rising from the roof on the south side, the other built into the outer wall on the north. The front and side walls were made from tan-colored limestone, carefully cut and brought in from Mississippi. The back wall and the 1-story wings were covered in smooth stucco, giving them a clean, bright finish. After Elvis bought the estate, he didn't waste any time making it his own. He spent more than $500,000 changing and adding to the property. One of his first changes was to enclose the grounds with a long pink stone wall made from Alabama fieldstone. Over the years, fans who came from around the world began writing messages and signatures all over that wall, turning it into a colorful and emotional tribute. It became known simply as the Wall, and it told its own story. A local builder named Abe Sauer helped bring many of Elvis's ideas to life. He crafted the front gates out of wrought iron, shaping them like a giant open book of sheet music. The gates were decorated with green musical notes and images of Elvis holding a guitar, mirrored on each side. These gates became as iconic as the mansion itself. Sauer also built a kidney-shaped swimming pool in the backyard, adding another touch of luxury. Then he created one of the more unusual features, a private racquetball court. One early morning in August 1977, Elvis spent time in that racquetball court. He played a few games with his girlfriend, his cousin, and his cousin's wife. After the game, he sat at the piano, a brown upright piano that stood in one spot, and played a couple of songs. Then he walked back into the main house, took a shower, and went to bed. That would be his final night. Today, the court has been carefully restored to look just as it did on that last day of his life. The two-story building looked like an old country club inside. It had a bar with dark leather seats and a sunken sitting area where Elvis could relax. Speakers filled the space with music from a stereo system that reached every corner of Graceland. Elsewhere on the grounds, there's a small white building that was used as an office by Elvis's father, Vernon. There was also an old smokehouse, once used for curing meat, that Elvis turned into a private shooting range. Nearby stood a stable where horses were kept, adding a country feel to the otherwise flashy estate. One of the more personal changes Elvis made to Graceland was the meditation garden. Designed by Bernard Grenadier, the garden was a quiet space created for thinking and reflecting. Elvis often spent time there when life felt heavy. Surrounded by flowers, fountains, and stone paths, it offered a calm corner on a property otherwise filled with activity. Many people had strong opinions about Graceland. Some visitors were surprised when they stepped inside. They expected elegance, but found a place that looked like something else entirely. The mansion was filled with velvet furniture, gold trim, glass ornaments, and bright colors. To some, it felt overdone. Critics believed the inside of Graceland was too flashy, even tasteless. They said it looked more like an old-time brothel than a superstar's home. They described the rooms as wild mixtures of red velour, shiny tassels, fancy European furniture, and knickknacks that didn't seem to belong together. Some said the house tried too hard to look royal or expensive and ended up feeling fake instead. Visitors who came from similar backgrounds as Elvis often walked through the home and called it tacky. Others used words like cheap or gaudy. Some even said it looked like the kind of place that tried to be classy but wasn't. One expert described the entire estate as a kind of dream, a colorful illusion. From the outside, the house reminded people of old Southern mansions, but inside, it felt more like a mix of Hollywood sets. Still, Elvis seemed to love it. He filled it with the things that made him happy, no matter what other people thought. Some fans felt a little let down when they saw the formal rooms near the front of the house. These rooms looked elegant but cold, dressed in shades of blue and white that felt distant. On the other hand, the jungle room was unforgettable. It was filled with fake plants, animal prints, carved wood, and shag carpets. It was bold, strange, and loud. For many fans, it was proof that Elvis lived on his own terms. Today, Graceland still stands strong. Even after years of changes, it remains a reflection of a man who never did things halfway. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.